The storm rolled in from the north with a fury that only the Montana Territory could deliver, and Kyle Anderson knew that any creature caught out in it tonight would be dead by morning. He stood at the window of his ranch house, watching the snow begin to fall in thick, heavy curtains across his land. The year was 1876, and winter in the territory was unforgiving. His cattle were safely in the barn, his horses bedded down for the night. The fire in the stone hearth crackled warmly behind him as he turned away from the window, ready to settle in with a cup of coffee and the warmth of his home. That was when he heard it. A sound so faint he almost convinced himself it was just the wind. But then it came again, a weak cry that sent him moving toward the door without thinking. Kyle grabbed his heavy coat and pulled it on, stepping out onto the covered porch. The cold hit him like a physical blow, stealing his breath for a moment. There, collapsed at the edge of his property near the fence line, was a figure in the snow. Kyle ran without hesitation, his boots crunching through the deepening white blanket. As he drew closer, he could see it was a woman, her dark hair plastered to her face, her clothing inadequate for this weather. She was native, he could tell from her dress and features, and when she looked up at him with desperate eyes, he saw something else that made his heart clench with urgency. She was heavily pregnant. "Please," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. "Help me." Kyle did not hesitate. He scooped her up into his arms, surprised at how light she was despite her condition. She groaned softly but did not protest as he carried her quickly back to the house. Once inside, he kicked the door shut behind them and carried her to the bed in his small sleeping area. The house was not large, just 3 rooms, but it was warm and dry, and that was what mattered now. "You are safe now," he told her, grabbing blankets from the chest at the foot of the bed. "Let me get you warm." She was shivering violently, her lips tinged with blue. Kyle worked quickly, removing her wet outer garments with as much propriety as he could manage, averting his eyes when necessary. He wrapped her in dry blankets, pulling them up to her chin. Her eyes followed his movements, wide and fearful. "What is your name?" he asked gently, moving to the fire to heat water. "Zara," she managed through chattering teeth. "Zara Running Deer." "I am Kyle Anderson. This is my ranch. You are safe here, Zara. I promise you that." He brought her warm water to sip, holding the cup to her lips when her hands shook too badly to hold it herself. Gradually, color began to return to her face. The firelight played across her features, and Kyle found himself struck by her beauty despite the circumstances. She had strong, elegant features, high cheekbones, and eyes that held both intelligence and sorrow. "The baby," she whispered, her hand moving to her swollen belly. "Is it time?" Kyle felt panic surge through him. "I do not know anything about delivering babies." "I do not think it is time yet," she said, her breathing steadying. "But it will be soon, perhaps days." "What are you doing out here alone in this weather?" Kyle asked, pulling a chair close to the bedside. "Where is your family, your husband?" Pain flashed across her face and she turned her eyes away. "My husband is dead, killed 3 months ago by white settlers who wanted our land. My family, my clan, they are camped in the mountains, but the soldiers came. We scattered. I was separated in the confusion. I have been trying to find them for 2 days, but the storm came, and I had no strength left." Kyle felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, but at the injustice of her words. He had heard stories like this before, too many of them. The westward expansion brought opportunity for some but devastating loss for others. "I am sorry for your loss," he said quietly. "You may stay here as long as you need. I will help you find your family when the storm passes." Tears slipped down her cheeks. "You would help me." "Even though I am not your people, you are a person in need," Kyle said simply. "That is enough." He spent the night in the chair beside the bed, dozing occasionally but mostly watching to make sure Zara's condition remained stable. She slept fitfully, crying out occasionally in what he assumed was her native tongue. Each time, he would speak softly to her, reassuring her that she was safe until she settled again. As dawn broke, the storm had not abated. If anything, it had grown worse. Kyle rose stiffly from the chair and added wood to the fire, then went to prepare something for them to eat. He had venison stew left from the day before, and he heated it over the fire, filling the small house with its savory aroma. Zara stirred, her eyes opening slowly. "I thought perhaps I had dreamed you," she said softly. "No dream," Kyle replied with a small smile. "Just a rancher who has never been more grateful for a sturdy roof and thick walls." "Are you hungry?" she nodded, and he helped her sit up, propping pillows behind her. As he brought her a bowl of stew, he heard something over the howling wind. The sound of horses, many of them, and voices calling out. Kyle moved to the window and felt his breath catch. Through the swirling snow, he could make out dozens of figures on horseback, with more on foot. They were gathered at his gate, warriors and women, elders and children, a native clan armed and waiting. "Zara," he said carefully, not wanting to alarm her, "I think your family has found you." She struggled to rise from the bed, and he went to help her, supporting her weight as she shuffled to the window. When she saw the gathered people, she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "My clan, they found me. But how?" "They must have been tracking you," Kyle said. He could see the tension in the assembled group, the way the warriors held their weapons. "They look ready for a fight." "They will think you have taken me captive," Zara said, her voice filled with worry. "They will not understand. My brother, he is protective. Ever since my husband died, he has been like a bear with a cub." "Then we need to show them you are safe and here by choice," Kyle said. He grabbed his coat. "Stay inside where it is warm. Let me speak with them." "No," Zara said firmly, gripping his arm. "They will not trust you alone. I must come with you, or there will be bloodshed." Kyle knew she was right, though he hated the idea of her going out into the cold in her condition. Together, they moved to the door. He opened it slowly, making sure his hands were visible and empty. The assembled clan went silent as he stepped out onto the porch, Zara beside him, wrapped in his blankets. A man rode forward on a painted horse, his face hard and suspicious. He was young, perhaps in his mid-20s, with the same strong features as Zara. When he spoke, it was in their language, rapid and demanding. Zara responded, her voice steady despite her obvious fatigue. Kyle did not understand the words, but he understood tone. She was explaining, reassuring. The man, her brother he assumed, looked at Kyle with eyes that could have cut stone. "My brother asks why you took me in," Zara translated. "He wants to know what you expect in return." "Tell him I expect nothing," Kyle said, meeting the warrior's gaze steadily. "She was dying in the snow. Any decent person would have done the same." Zara translated, and there was a long silence. Then an older woman dismounted and walked forward, her bearing regal despite the harsh weather. She spoke, and Zara's expression softened. "This is my grandmother, White Bird Woman. She is an elder of our clan. She thanks you for saving my life and the life of my unborn child. She says you have shown honor. Your granddaughter and her child are welcome to stay here until she is strong enough to travel and the baby is born safely," Kyle said. "But I understand if your family wishes to take her with you now." More discussion followed among the clan members. Kyle stood still, feeling the cold seep through his coat, but unwilling to show any sign of discomfort or impatience. Finally, Zara's grandmother spoke again, her words carrying authority. "She says the storm is too dangerous for me to travel now, and the baby could come at any time," Zara translated. She asks if their clan may camp on your land until the storm passes and I am able to travel safely. They offer to help with your animals and any work that needs doing in exchange for the shelter of your land. Kyle considered this. His ranch was not large, but he had grazing land that extended into the foothills. There was a natural shelter there, a place where the rocks formed a protective barrier against the wind. There is a place to the east where the land rises. The rocks there provide good shelter. They are welcome to camp there, and I would be grateful for help with the animals. This storm will be hard on all of us. When Zara translated this, there was a visible relaxation among the gathered people. Her brother still looked suspicious, but he nodded curtly. The grandmother stepped closer, reaching out to touch Zara's face gently, then said something that made Zara laugh softly. She says I have found a good man with a kind heart, and perhaps the spirits led me here for a reason. Kyle felt his face warm despite the cold. I am glad I could help. The clan began to disperse, moving toward the area Kyle had indicated. But Zara's brother remained along with another warrior and the grandmother. The brother spoke, his tone still hard but less hostile. My brother is called Running Wolf, Zara said. He says he will stay close to watch over me. He and Gray Cloud, his friend, will help you with your animals during the storm. I appreciate the help, Kyle said, addressing Running Wolf directly. Your sister is safe with me. You have my word. Running Wolf studied him for a long moment, then gave a single sharp nod before dismounting. The grandmother came up onto the porch, taking Zara's arm and speaking rapidly. Zara nodded, responding in their language. She wants to make sure I am truly well, Zara explained. She is a healer and wants to examine me and the baby. Of course, Kyle said. Please come inside. The next hours were busy despite the storm. While White Bird Woman tended to Zara inside, Kyle worked with Running Wolf and Gray Cloud to ensure all the animals were secure and had adequate food and water. The two native men worked efficiently, communicating with Kyle through gestures and the few words they shared in common. Despite the language barrier, Kyle found himself developing a grudging respect for both men. They were skilled and hardworking, never shirking even in the bitter cold. When they finally returned to the house, stamping snow from their boots on the porch, Kyle opened the door to find White Bird Woman had taken over his small kitchen. She had made some kind of tea that filled the house with an herbal aroma, and Zara was sitting up in bed, looking much better than she had the night before. The grandmother spoke to Running Wolf, who translated haltingly. She says sister and baby are strong. Baby will come soon, maybe 2 or 3 days. She will stay here to help, Kyle nodded. She is welcome. You both are, though I do not have much space. We sleep here, Running Wolf said, gesturing to the floor near the fire. We guard sister. Kyle understood. He was still not fully trusted, and Running Wolf intended to make sure nothing happened to Zara. He could not blame the man. In his position, Kyle would likely do the same. There are extra blankets in the chest, he said, pointing. Help yourselves. That night the small house held 5 people. Zara slept in the bed, with White Bird Woman on a pallet nearby. Running Wolf and Gray Cloud took positions near the fire, and Kyle made himself a place to sleep in the small room he used for storage, using saddle blankets and his coat for warmth. It was cramped and unusual, but there was something comforting about the presence of other people. Kyle had lived alone for 3 years since buying this ranch, and he had grown accustomed to solitude. Now, listening to the soft breathing and occasional murmured words from the main room, he realized how much he had missed human companionship. The storm lasted 3 days. During that time, Kyle found himself drawn into the rhythms of the small group sheltering in his home. White Bird Woman proved to be an excellent cook. improving his simple fare with herbs and techniques he had never seen before. Running Wolf and Gray Cloud continued to help with the animals, and gradually, the tension between Kyle and the two warriors began to ease. They taught him some words in their language, and he taught them more English. Gray Cloud, it turned out, had a dry sense of humor that often caught Kyle off guard, making him laugh despite himself. But it was Zara who captured most of Kyle's attention. As she regained her strength, they talked for hours while the storm raged outside. She told him about her life, about growing up with her clan, about the husband she had loved and lost. Her name had been given to her because of a particularly beautiful sunset the night she was born, her mother saying the colors were as vibrant as the daughter she had brought into the world. "We had a good life," she said softly one evening, her hands resting on her swollen belly. "We moved with the seasons, following the game, living as our people always have. But then more settlers came, and the government decided our land was needed for something else. They moved us to a reservation, a place where the earth was poor and the game scarce. My husband, he spoke out against this injustice. He tried to make them understand that we needed our traditional lands to survive." "What happened to him?" Kyle asked gently, though he could guess. "Some settlers accused him of stealing their cattle. They said he was a thief, but it was not true. He never stole anything. They came at night, a group of men with their faces covered. They dragged him from our tent and hanged him from a tree. I begged them to stop, but they pushed me away. I was already pregnant in the fall. The doctor said I was lucky not to lose the baby." Kyle felt rage burn in his chest. "That is not justice. That is murder." "Many white men do not see it that way when it comes to my people," Zara said quietly. "They see us as obstacles to be removed, not as human beings with the same rights they claim for themselves." "Not all of us think that way," Kyle said firmly. "Some of us came west looking for a fresh start, not to take what belongs to others. I bought this land from a man who had legitimate title. I made sure of it because I did not want to build my future on someone else's stolen dreams." Zara looked at him with an expression he could not quite read. "You are different from most white men I have met. Maybe, or maybe there are more like me than you have been given the chance to know." They fell into silence, but it was a comfortable one. Kyle found himself watching the firelight play across her features, noticing the elegant line of her neck, the way her hair fell across her shoulders. He had always thought her beautiful, but now he was beginning to see something more. There was a strength in her, a resilience that commanded respect. Despite everything she had lost, she was not broken. She was here, fighting to survive, fighting for her child's future. On the fourth day, the storm finally broke. The sun emerged, brilliant and harsh against the white landscape. Kyle stepped outside to find the world transformed into a glittering wonderland of snow and ice. The clan had weathered the storm well. He could see smoke rising from their camp, and figures moving about their morning tasks. Inside, White Bird Woman was helping Zara stand and walk around the room. The elder had insisted that Zara needed to keep moving to stay strong for the coming birth. Kyle was making breakfast when Zara suddenly gasped, doubling over. "What is wrong?" Kyle asked, dropping the pan and rushing to her side. "The baby," Zara gasped. "I think it is coming." The next hours were a blur for Kyle. White Bird Woman took charge immediately, sending Running Wolf to fetch 2 more women from the camp who had experience with births. Kyle found himself relegated to keeping the fire going and water heating, while the women worked with Zara in the sleeping area. A blanket hung for privacy. He had never felt so useless in his life. He could hear Zara's cries of pain, could hear the women encouraging her in their language, and all he could do was pace and pray that everything would be all right. Running Wolf and Gray Cloud stood watch outside, giving the women space to work. It was late afternoon when Kyle finally heard a new sound, a thin, reedy cry that grew stronger by the second. One of the women emerged from behind the blanket, smiling broadly, and said something he did not understand but needed no translation for. The baby was here, and from the sound of those cries, very much alive. "Can I see her?" Kyle asked hesitantly. "I mean, if it is allowed. I do not want to intrude." The woman nodded and beckoned him forward. Kyle stepped behind the blanket to find Zara propped up on pillows, her face pale and exhausted but radiant with joy. In her arms, wrapped in soft cloth, was a tiny baby with a shock of dark hair and a red, wrinkled face that was, Kyle thought, the most beautiful thing he had ever seen. "It is a boy," Zara said softly, looking up at Kyle with tears streaming down her face. "A son. I have a son." "He is perfect," Kyle said, moving closer. "May I?" Zara nodded, and Kyle reached out a finger to gently touch the baby's tiny hand. Immediately, the infant's fingers wrapped around his with surprising strength. "He likes you," Zara said with a tired smile. "What will you name him?" Kyle asked. "In my culture, a baby's name is chosen carefully, often revealed through dreams or signs, but I have been thinking. My husband's name was Running Bear. Perhaps I will name him Little Bear to honor his father." "That is a good name," Kyle said. "A strong name." White Bird Woman began speaking rapidly, and Zara nodded in response. "She says I must rest now. The birth was good, but I am weak. She says I should stay here another week to regain my strength before traveling." "You are welcome to stay as long as you need," Kyle said. "Both of you." Over the next week, Kyle's small ranch house became a place of warmth and life unlike anything he had experienced before. Little Bear proved to have healthy lungs and an appetite to match, keeping everyone awake at odd hours. But Kyle found he did not mind. There was something deeply satisfying about hearing a baby's cry in the night, knowing it meant new life continuing despite all the hardships of the world. He watched Zara with her son and felt something shift in his chest. She was a natural mother, gentle but competent, patient even when exhausted. And when she smiled down at Little Bear, her whole face transformed with love, Kyle felt his heart respond in ways he had not expected. He was falling in love with her. The realization hit him one morning as he watched her sitting by the window, Little Bear nursing contentedly while she hummed a soft tune. The sunlight streamed through the glass, illuminating her like something from a painting. Kyle had never considered himself a romantic man. He had come to Montana to build something with his hands, to carve out a life from the rough land. Romance had seemed like a luxury he could think about later, once he was established. But now, watching Zara, he understood that some things could not be planned or scheduled. Some things simply happened, like storms or springtime, arriving whether you were ready or not. The problem was that she was still grieving her husband, still adjusting to motherhood, and dealing with the trauma of being hunted and alone. Kyle knew this was possibly the worst time to develop feelings for her. But the heart, he was learning, did not care much about timing. Running Wolf had noticed. Kyle could tell by the way the warrior watched him, eyes sharp and assessing. One evening, when they were bringing in wood for the fire, Running Wolf spoke in his halting English. "You look at my sister with soft eyes." Kyle felt his face flush, but he did not deny it. "She is a remarkable woman." "She is grieving," Running Wolf said firmly. "Her husband was a good man. His memory is still fresh in her heart." "I know," Kyle said. "I would never pressure her or make her uncomfortable. I promise you that." Running Wolf studied him for a long moment. "You are a good man too, I think. You could have turned away when you found her. Many white men would have. But you helped her, asked nothing in return. This is honorable." "It was the right thing to do." "Yes, but many people do not do right thing even when they know what it is. Running Wolf set down his load of wood. I tell you this, if you have feelings for my sister, you must be patient. Her heart is wounded like animal caught in trap. It will take time for her to heal, to trust again. I understand, Kyle said. And if she never wants more than friendship, I will accept that too. Running Wolf nodded slowly. This is good answer. I think maybe the spirits brought her to your door for reason. My grandmother, she says same thing. She says she sees the way you two look at each other when you think no one watches. Kyle felt his embarrassment deepen. Am I that obvious? For the first time since they had met, Running Wolf smiled, a brief flash of humor that transformed his stern face. Like wolf howling at moon. Yes, that obvious. Despite his embarrassment, Kyle found himself laughing. There was something liberating about having his feelings acknowledged, even if nothing could come of them yet. A week after Little Bear's birth, White Bird Woman declared that Zara was strong enough to travel if she wished. The weather had turned milder, and the clan was preparing to move on, heading to their winter camp in a protected valley to the north. Kyle felt his heart sink at the news, but he kept his expression neutral. Of course, Zara would want to go with her family. Why would she stay here with a stranger, no matter how kind he had been? She had a life, a people, a culture to return to, but when Running Wolf came to speak with Zara about the journey, she surprised everyone. I do not want to leave yet, she said quietly. The baby is so young and the journey is long. I want to wait a few more weeks until he is stronger. Running Wolf looked concerned. You would stay here alone with this white man. What would people say? Grandmother can stay with me, Zara said, and you can visit regularly to check on us. But I do not feel ready to travel yet, brother. Please understand. White Bird Woman spoke up, supporting her granddaughter's decision. After much discussion, it was agreed that Zara and White Bird Woman would remain at the ranch for another month, while the clan continued to their winter camp. Running Wolf and Gray Cloud would return every few days to check on them and bring news. After the clan departed, the ranch seemed both emptier and more intimate at the same time. It was just Kyle, Zara, Little Bear, and White Bird Woman now. The older woman proved to be excellent company, teaching Kyle more of her language and learning English in return. She also shared stories of her people's history, tales that went back generations. Our people have lived on this land since the time when the world was young, she told him one evening as they sat by the fire. Zara was sleeping, exhausted from caring for Little Bear. We know every stream, every valley, every mountain. This land is not just our home, it is part of who we are. What will happen to your people now? Kyle asked. With the government pushing all the tribes onto reservations, White Bird Woman's face grew sad. We will adapt as we always have, but it will be hard. Many of the young ones will lose touch with the old ways. The language, the stories, the connection to the land, it will all fade like morning mist. This is what they want, I think, for us to forget who we are to become like them. That would be a great loss, Kyle said quietly. Every people has something unique to offer the world. When a culture dies, we all lose something. The old woman looked at him with surprise and respect. You understand more than most white men. I see now why my granddaughter feels safe here. As the days passed, Kyle and Zara fell into a comfortable routine. He would handle the outdoor work while she cared for Little Bear, and in the evenings, they would share meals and conversation. White Bird Woman often retired early, leaving them alone by the fire, and Kyle cherished these moments. They talked about everything, their childhoods, their dreams, their fears. Zara told him about the traditions of her people, the ceremonies and celebrations that marked the turning of the seasons. Kyle shared his own story, how he had grown up in Missouri, the son of a farmer, and had headed west after his parents died, looking for a fresh start. "I wanted to build something of my own," he explained. "Something that would last, that I could be proud of. This ranch is small, but it is mine. Every fence post, every building, I put it there with my own hands." "That is important to you, to make your own way," Zara observed. "Yes, I never wanted to just inherit something or have it given to me. I wanted to earn it." "My people understand this," Zara said. "We have a tradition where young men and women must prove themselves before they can be considered adults. They go on vision quests, seeking guidance from the spirits, or they must accomplish difficult tasks to show they have the skills and wisdom to contribute to the clan." "What was your trial?" Kyle asked. Zara smiled at the memory. "I had to track and hunt a deer by myself without any help. It took me 3 days, but I finally succeeded. When I returned with the meat, I was welcomed as a full member of the clan, able to speak in councils and make my own decisions about my life." "Including choosing your own husband," her smile faded slightly. "Yes, my husband and I, we chose each other. Our families approved, which was important, but the choice was ours. He courted me for 2 years before I agreed to marry him. He must have been a patient man." "He was," Zara said softly, "and kind. He never tried to control me or make me less than I was. He valued my opinions and treated me as an equal. This is not always the case, even among my own people. Some men believe women should be silent and obedient. My husband believed we were partners, working together to build a good life. He sounds like he was a good man. I am sorry you lost him." "So am I," Zara said, her eyes distant. "I miss him every day, but I also know he would want me to live, to find joy again. Before he died, in those last moments, he made me promise that I would not let grief destroy me, that I would go on for the sake of our child." "You have kept that promise," Kyle said. "You are one of the strongest people I have ever met." Zara turned to look at him, and in the firelight her eyes seemed to glow. "You helped make it possible. If you had not taken me in that night, little Bear and I would both be dead. I owe you my life, Kyle Anderson." "You owe me nothing," Kyle said firmly. "I am just glad I was here when you needed help." They sat in silence for a while, and then Zara spoke again, her voice hesitant. "Kyle, I need to tell you something. I have noticed the way you look at me sometimes, and I want you to know that I am aware of it." Kyle felt his face burn with embarrassment. "I am sorry. I did not mean to make you uncomfortable. I know this is not the right time, and I have no right to have any feelings for you at all. I will try to be more careful." "No," Zara said, reaching out to touch his hand. "You misunderstand. I am not uncomfortable. I am. I am trying to say that I have noticed, because I find myself looking at you the same way." Kyle's breath caught. "You do?" "Yes," Zara said softly. "It confuses me. I did not expect to feel anything like this so soon after losing my husband. I thought my heart was closed, that I would spend the rest of my life alone, raising my son and honoring my husband's memory. But then you came into my life, and you have been so kind, so patient. You make me feel safe in a way I did not think I would ever feel again with a man." "Zara, Kyle did not know what to say. His heart was pounding so hard he was sure she could hear it. "I am not ready for anything yet," Zara continued. "My heart is still healing and I need time. But I wanted you to know that when I am ready, if you are still willing, I would like to see where these feelings lead." Kyle squeezed her hand gently. "I will wait as long as you need. And if you change your mind, if you decide you do not want anything beyond friendship, I will understand that too." "Whatever you need, Zara, I am here." She smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Thank you, Kyle, for everything." That night, Kyle lay in his makeshift bed in the storage room, unable to sleep despite his exhaustion. Zara had feelings for him. It seemed too good to be true, like something out of a dream. But it was real. She had said it herself. He knew the road ahead would not be easy. There would be people who disapproved of a white man and a native woman being together, people on both sides who would judge them harshly. But Kyle found he did not care. He had spent his whole life trying to do the right thing, trying to be honorable. For once, he wanted to follow his heart, regardless of what anyone else thought. The next month passed in a blur of quiet domesticity. Winter settled in fully, bringing more snow and cold temperatures, but the ranch was well prepared. Kyle had laid in plenty of supplies, and White Bird Woman proved to be a genius at stretching provisions and finding ways to add variety to their meals. Little Bear grew rapidly, his eyes beginning to focus, his tiny hands reaching out to grasp at the world around him. Kyle found himself utterly charmed by the baby. He would sometimes hold Little Bear while Zara rested, walking around the small house, talking to the infant about everything and nothing. "Your mother is the bravest person I know," he told Little Bear one afternoon. "And you are going to grow up to be just as strong and good as she is. I promise you that." Zara, watching from the bed, felt her heart warm. This man, this white rancher who owed her nothing, had become one of the most important people in her life. She could see how carefully he held her son, how his whole face softened when he looked at the baby. He would make a good father, she thought, and then was surprised by the thought. Was she really considering a future with Kyle? A real future, Running Wolf and Gray Cloud visited regularly, as promised. Each time they stayed for a day or two, helping with the heavy work around the ranch, hunting to bring in fresh meat. Running Wolf still watched Kyle carefully, but the hostility was gone, replaced by grudging respect. "My sister seems happy here," Running Wolf said to Kyle one day as they mended a section of fence. "I have not seen her smile like this since before her husband died." "She is an amazing woman," Kyle said simply. "You care for her, this is clear, but what are your intentions?" "If you are only playing with her heart, I will not permit it." "I love her," Kyle said bluntly. "I know it is fast and I know it is complicated, but I cannot deny what I feel. If she will have me, I want to build a life with her. I want to be a father to Little Bear and to any other children we might have. I want to wake up next to her for the rest of my life." Running Wolf stopped working and turned to face Kyle fully. "You would marry her, take her as your wife in the ways of your people, if she will have me, yes. And if it is important to her, I would also be honored to participate in any ceremonies from your culture. I want to do this right, Running Wolf. I want her family's blessing." The warrior was silent for a long moment. "My grandmother says the spirits brought you and my sister together. She says it is meant to be. I was not sure I believed her. I thought perhaps she was just happy that my sister had found a safe place. But now, hearing you speak, seeing how you look at her, I think maybe grandmother is right." "Does that mean I have your blessing?" Kyle asked. "It means you have my willingness to consider it," Running Wolf said. "But the decision is my sister's. If she chooses you, I will support her choice. But if you ever hurt her, Kyle Anderson, there will be no place you can hide that I will not find you." "Fair enough," Kyle said, extending his hand. "I would expect nothing less." Running Wolf looked at the offered hand for a moment, then grasped it firmly. It was a pact between them, a promise and a warning all at once. As winter deepened, Kyle found himself thinking more and more about the future. His feelings for Zara had only grown stronger with time. He loved the way she hummed while she worked, loved her quick intelligence and dry sense of humor. He loved how fiercely she protected her son, and how she had slowly begun to open up about her hopes and dreams. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Zara brought up something that had clearly been on her mind. "Kyle, I have been thinking about what will happen when spring comes." My family will expect me to join them at their new camp, but I find myself reluctant to leave. Kyle's heart leaped, but he kept his voice steady. What do you want to do? I want to stay, Zara said quietly. Here with you, but I do not know if that is possible. What would people say? How would it work? We could make it work if you want to, Kyle said. As for what people would say, I have never cared much for gossip. This is my land and I will welcome whoever I choose on it. If you want to stay, Zara, I would be honored to have you. As what? Zara asked, her eyes searching his face. As a guest, as a hired hand. What would I be? Kyle took a deep breath. This was it, the moment he had been both anticipating and dreading. As my wife, if you will have me. I love you, Zara. I know it is soon, and I know we come from different worlds. But I also know that what I feel for you is real and deep. You make me want to be a better man. You make this house feel like a home instead of just a place to sleep. I want to spend my life with you, to help you raise little Bear, to build something good together. Tears were streaming down Zara's face, but she was smiling. I love you too, she whispered. I did not think I could feel this way again, but you have shown me that the heart has more capacity than I knew. Yes, Kyle. Yes, I will marry you. Kyle moved to her side and took her in his arms, careful not to jostle little Bear who was sleeping in a cradle nearby. He kissed her gently, reverently, and felt her respond. It was not a kiss of desperate passion, but of deep affection and promise. It was a kiss that spoke of futures and family, of choosing each other despite all the obstacles in their way. When they broke apart, Zara was laughing and crying at the same time. My brother is going to be so surprised. I already spoke to him, Kyle admitted. I asked for his blessing. Well, I told him my intentions at least. And what did he say? That if I ever hurt you, he will hunt me down, which seems fair. Zara laughed again, the sound filling the small house with warmth. That does sound like him, and my grandmother. She has been dropping hints for weeks that I should marry you. I think she knew before either of us did. She usually does, Zara said fondly. She has a gift for seeing what others miss. They spent the rest of the evening making plans. They would wait until spring to have the wedding, giving Zara more time to heal and allowing the weather to improve so her family could attend. They would have 2 ceremonies, one in the tradition of Kyle's people and one in the tradition of Zara's, honoring both of their cultures. I want little Bear to know both sides of his heritage, Zara said. His father's people and your people. I want him to grow up understanding that he belongs to both worlds, and that is a gift, not a burden. Agreed, Kyle said. And I want to learn more about your culture, your language. I want to be able to speak with your family, to understand the stories and traditions. I will teach you, Zara promised. And you can teach me more about ranching. I want to be a true partner in this life we are building. Over the next months, they did exactly that. Zara proved to be a quick study, learning the ins and outs of ranch management with the same competence she brought to everything else. Kyle, in turn, spent hours learning the language of Zara's people, stumbling over pronunciations but persistent in his efforts. White Bird Woman was an excellent teacher, patient and encouraging. When spring finally arrived, melting the snow and bringing green to the land, Zara's family returned. The entire clan came, including Running Wolf, Gray Cloud, and many others Kyle had not yet met. They set up camp on Kyle's land again, and preparations began for the wedding. The ceremonies took place over 3 days. The first day followed the traditions of Zara's people. Kyle and Zara exchanged gifts, symbolizing their commitment to support each other. Kyle gave Zara a beautiful horse he had been training all winter, a gentle mare that would be perfect for her. Zara gave Kyle a shirt she had made herself, decorated with intricate beadwork and patterns that told a story. These symbols represent our journey, she explained as she presented it to him. Here is the storm that brought us together. Here is the shelter you provided. Here is the baby, representing new life and new beginnings. And here, these intertwining patterns, they represent our two lives becoming one. Kyle was deeply moved. He put on the shirt immediately, feeling the weight of her love in every carefully placed bead. That evening there was a feast and dancing. Kyle did his best to participate in the dances, earning good-natured laughter from the clan when he stumbled over the steps. But no one mocked him cruelly. Instead, they seemed pleased by his efforts to honor their traditions. The second day was for the ceremony in Kyle's tradition. Running Wolf had ridden to the nearest town, a place called Ruby City in Montana Territory, to bring back a circuit preacher who happened to be passing through. The preacher, a weathered man named Reverend Thomas, had been uncertain about performing a marriage between a white man and a native woman, but Kyle had been firm. "If you will not marry us, I will find someone who will," he had said flatly. "But I would prefer to do this with a man of God present." Reverend Thomas had relented, perhaps moved by Kyle's obvious sincerity. The ceremony was simple, held outdoors with the whole clan and a few neighboring ranchers as witnesses. Kyle had been worried about how the neighbors would react, but most seemed curious rather than hostile. One older rancher, a man named Samuel Kent, had even congratulated them warmly. "It is about time someone in this territory showed some sense," Samuel had said. "We are all just trying to make a living here. No reason we cannot do it together." When Kyle and Zara exchanged vows, promising to love and honor each other for the rest of their lives, there was not a dry eye in the gathering. Even Running Wolf looked moved, though he tried to hide it. The third day was for celebration. Both cultures came together in a feast that combined the best of both traditions. There was roasted venison and beef, corn prepared in the native style, bread and preserves from Kyle's stores, and wild berries gathered by the women of the clan. Musicians from both groups played, creating a unique blend of sounds that seemed to symbolize the union of Kyle and Zara themselves. Little Bear, now 4 months old and thriving, was passed from person to person, admired and cooed over. White Bird Woman had declared him blessed by the spirits, destined for a life of bringing people together. Kyle, watching his new wife dance with her son in her arms, thought the old woman might be right. As the sun set on the third day, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and red, Kyle and Zara finally found a moment alone. They walked to a small rise overlooking the ranch, the sounds of celebration still audible behind them. "Are you happy?" Kyle asked, taking her hand. "Happier than I ever thought I would be again," Zara said. "When I lost my first husband, I thought my life was over. I thought I would just exist, caring for my child but never truly living again. But you showed me that life can surprise us, that love can come when we least expect it." "I feel the same," Kyle said. "I came to Montana looking for land and independence. I never expected to find a family." "That is what we are now," Zara said, leaning against his shoulder. "A family, you, me, and Little Bear, and perhaps, if the spirits are willing, more children in the future." "I would like that," Kyle said. "A house full of children, growing up knowing both cultures, learning to see the world with open hearts and minds." They stood together as the stars began to emerge, feeling the promise of the future stretching out before them like the vast Montana sky. It would not always be easy, Kyle knew. There would be challenges, prejudice from some, practical difficulties of blending two ways of life. But standing here with Zara, he knew they could face anything together. The years that followed proved both challenging and rewarding. Kyle and Zara built a life together that honored both of their backgrounds. The ranch prospered, helped in part by Running Wolf and Gray Cloud, who eventually decided to settle nearby. They built their own small houses on Kyle's land with his blessing and helped manage the growing herd of cattle. Zara became known in the area as a skilled healer, having learned much from her grandmother. White Bird Woman lived with them until she passed peacefully in her sleep 5 years after Kyle and Zara's wedding. Her death was mourned by both the native community and the white settlers, who had come to respect her wisdom. Little Bear grew into a bright, curious boy who moved easily between both worlds. He learned to read and write from Kyle, and learned the stories and traditions of his people from his mother and uncle. When he was 7, Zara gave birth to twin girls, whom they named Sarah and Mary in English, and Morning Light and Spring Rain in the language of Zara's people. The girls were followed 2 years later by another son, whom they named Thomas Running Water Anderson, honoring both his heritage. The ranch grew from a modest operation to one of the most successful in the territory. Kyle's fair dealings and Zara's diplomatic skills helped build bridges between the white settlers and the native communities in the area. Their home became a place where people from both cultures could meet and talk, where friendships were formed and understanding grew. Not everyone approved, of course. There were those who whispered about the mixed marriage, who looked down on their children as half-breeds. But Kyle and Zara had expected this, and they raised their children to be proud of their heritage, all of it. They taught them to respond to prejudice with dignity, and to judge people by their actions rather than their words. Ruby City grew into a prosperous town, and Kyle became a respected member of the community. He served on the town council and used his position to advocate for fair treatment of the native peoples in the area. It was not always popular, but Kyle had learned from Zara that standing up for what is right is more important than being popular. When Montana became a state in 1889, Kyle and Zara attended the celebration together, their children proudly standing beside them. Little Bear, now a young man of 13, spoke at the ceremony, delivering a speech in both English and his mother's language about the importance of unity and understanding. His words moved many in the crowd, including the governor, who praised the young man's eloquence. As Kyle looked at his family that day, his wife still beautiful and strong at his side, his children growing into remarkable individuals, he felt a profound sense of gratitude. His life had not turned out anything like he had planned when he first came to Montana territory as a young man with nothing but determination and a dream. It had turned out so much better. That night, as they returned to the ranch, Zara leaned against Kyle in the wagon, her head on his shoulder. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked softly. "Marrying me, taking on all the complications that came with it." Kyle looked down at her in genuine surprise. "Regret it? Zara, marrying you was the best decision I ever made. You and our children are everything to me. Whatever difficulties we have faced, they are nothing compared to the joy you have brought into my life." "I feel the same," Zara said. "Sometimes I think back to that night when I collapsed in the snow at your gate. I was sure I was going to die. I remember praying that anyone would find me and save my baby, even if I did not make it. And then you were there, this stranger who had every reason to turn away, but you did not. You saved my life, Kyle. You saved both our lives." "And you saved mine," Kyle said. "I did not even know I needed saving, but I did. I was turning into a bitter, lonely man, caring only about building my ranch and proving myself. You showed me what really matters. Love, family, connection. Those are the things that make life worth living." The wagon creaked along the familiar road, the children chattering excitedly in the back about the day's events. In the distance, they could see the lights of their home, warm and welcoming. White Bird Woman had been right all those years ago. The spirits had brought Zara to Kyle's door that night for a reason. Two people from different worlds, brought together by chance and necessity, had found in each other exactly what they needed. Years continued to pass, marked by the changing seasons and the rhythms of ranch life. Little Bear grew into a young man who embodied the best of both his cultures. At 18, he chose to attend the university in Missoula, becoming one of the first native students there. He studied law, determined to use his education to help protect the rights of his mother's people and others who faced injustice. The twins, Sarah and Mary, or Morning Light and Spring Rain as they preferred to be called, proved to be skilled horse trainers like their mother. They began breeding horses specifically suited to the Montana climate and terrain, and their stock became highly sought after throughout the territory and beyond. Thomas Running Water, the youngest, had his father's head for business and his mother's gift for bringing people together. He took over the day-to-day management of the ranch when he was just 16, showing a maturity and wisdom beyond his years. Kyle and Zara aged together, their love deepening with each passing year. On their 20th anniversary, Kyle took Zara back to the spot where he had found her that snowy night. A permanent marker now stood there, placed by their children as a surprise. It was a simple stone cairn with a plaque that read, "On this spot, 2 lives were saved, and a family began. May all who pass remember that kindness to strangers is never wasted." Zara wept when she saw it, and Kyle held her close. "We have built something good here," he said. "Not just a ranch or a home, but a legacy. Our children will carry forward what we have taught them and their children after them. This is what matters, Zara. This is what lasts." Running Wolf and Gray Cloud remained close to the family throughout their lives. Running Wolf never married, declaring that his purpose was to protect his family and his people. He became an elder of the clan, respected for his wisdom and his willingness to negotiate fairly with the white authorities. Gray Cloud married a woman from a neighboring clan and had 6 children of his own, all of whom were close to Kyle and Zara's children, growing up more like cousins than friends. The ranch continued to prosper, becoming a symbol of what was possible when people chose cooperation over conflict. Kyle and Zara never forgot the struggles their people had faced, the injustices that had been done. But they also believed in the possibility of healing, of building a better future through understanding and mutual respect. When Kyle was in his 60s and Zara in her late 50s, they began to slow down, letting their children take on more of the responsibilities of the ranch. They spent their time together, enjoying the quiet moments, watching their grandchildren play in the same fields where their own children had grown up. One evening, sitting on the porch as the sun set, Zara turned to Kyle with a soft smile. "Do you remember what my grandmother used to say? That the spirits brought us together." "I remember," Kyle said, taking her hand. "Do you believe it?" "I do," Zara said. "I do not think it was just chance that I ended up at your gate that night. I think somehow, someway we were meant to find each other. 2 people who needed each other, even though we did not know it yet." "I cannot argue with that," Kyle said. "Though I like to think we made our own destiny too. The spirits may have brought us together, but we chose to stay together. We chose to build this life." "Yes," Zara agreed. "And what a life it has been." They sat in comfortable silence, their hands clasped, watching the stars emerge one by one. Around them, the sounds of the ranch settling in for the night were familiar and comforting. The lowing of cattle, the whinny of horses, the distant laughter of grandchildren being called in for bed. It was the sound of home, of family, of a life well lived. Kyle and Zara lived to see their golden anniversary, a rare achievement celebrated by the entire community. People came from hundreds of miles away to honor them, white and native alike, all touched by the couple who had shown that love could bridge any divide. Little Bear, now a prominent lawyer and advocate, gave a speech that brought tears to many eyes. My parents taught me that the measure of a person is not the color of their skin or the language they speak, but the content of their character and the kindness of their heart, he said. They showed all of us, that when we choose love over hate, understanding over prejudice, we all benefit. Their marriage was not just a union of two people, but a symbol of what we can achieve when we see each other as human beings first and foremost. Kyle and Zara sat together, their hair white, their faces lined with age but still showing traces of the people they had been when they first met. They held hands as they had done countless times before, their connection as strong as it had been that first night when Kyle had carried Zara out of the snow. When Kyle passed away at the age of 73, peacefully in his sleep with Zara beside him, it was said that even the mountains seemed to mourn. The funeral brought together the largest gathering the area had ever seen. Native elders and white settlers, farmers and ranchers, lawyers and laborers, all came to pay their respects to a man who had lived his life with integrity and love. Zara grieved deeply, but did not let it destroy her. She had learned long ago that grief was a tribute to love, proof that what you had shared was real and valuable. She lived another 7 years, surrounded by her children and grandchildren, continuing to be a source of wisdom and strength for her family and community. When she passed, she was buried next to Kyle on a hill overlooking the ranch, just as she had requested. The view from that spot encompassed everything they had built together, the ranch land stretching out in all directions, the mountains rising in the distance, and below, the house where their love story had begun. At her funeral, Running Wolf, old now himself but still strong, spoke of his sister. Zara Running Deer Anderson was a bridge between worlds, he said, his voice thick with emotion. She suffered great loss but found great love. She faced prejudice with grace and ignorance with patience. She raised her children to be proud of all they were, and she showed us that family is not defined by blood alone, but by the bonds we choose to create. She was my sister, my friend, and one of the bravest people I have ever known. The children, Little Bear, the twins, and Thomas Running Water, all grown now with children and grandchildren of their own, stood together as their mother was laid to rest. They mourned, but they also celebrated. Celebrated a life lived fully, a love that had overcome every obstacle, and a legacy that would continue through them and their descendants. Years later, the ranch that Kyle had built and that he and Zara had maintained together remained in the family. It had grown and changed, adapted to new times and new challenges, but at its heart, it remained true to the values its founders had established. The main house, expanded over the years, still contained the original room where Little Bear had been born, where Kyle and Zara had first acknowledged their love for each other. It was kept as a sort of shrine by the family, a reminder of where everything had begun. Little Bear, who had become a distinguished judge, wrote a book in his later years about his parents' lives. It became required reading in schools throughout Montana, a story of love and courage that inspired new generations. The book opened with that fateful night when Kyle had found Zara in the snow, and it traced their journey from that moment of crisis to their golden anniversary and beyond. In the introduction, Little Bear wrote, "My parents' story is not just a tale of individual love, though it certainly is that. It is also the story of what becomes possible when we choose to see beyond our differences, when we recognize our shared humanity. My father could have turned away that night. He could have convinced himself that my mother's problems were not his concern, but he did not. He chose compassion, and that choice changed not just his life and my mother's, but the lives of everyone who came after them. This is the power of a single act of kindness, a single choice to do what is right rather than what is easy. My parents' legacy is not just the ranch they built or the children they raised, but the example they set. May we all have the courage to follow it. The story of Kyle and Zara became legendary in Montana, passed down through generations. The stone cairn where Kyle had found Zara became a local landmark, visited by couples seeking blessings for their own relationships. It was said that if you stood there at sunrise and thought of someone you loved, the spirits would hear your prayers and strengthen your bond. On warm summer evenings, when the grandchildren and great-grandchildren of Kyle and Zara gathered at the ranch for family reunions, someone always told the story. The younger children would sit wide-eyed as they heard about the storm, the desperate pregnant woman, and the rancher who saved her. The older ones, who had heard the tale many times, still leaned in, still felt their hearts swell with pride at being descended from such remarkable people. The ranch itself stood as a testament to what Kyle and Zara had built, not just in terms of land and livestock, but in terms of relationships and community. It was a place where people of all backgrounds were welcome, where prejudice was challenged, and where love was celebrated in all its forms. The Anderson family became known throughout the state as people of integrity, carrying forward the values their ancestors had established. As the 20th century gave way to the 21st, the descendants of Kyle and Zara numbered in the hundreds. They were doctors and teachers, lawyers and ranchers, artists and scientists. They carried with them the mixed heritage of their ancestors, proud to be descended from both the white rancher and the native woman who had found each other in the most unlikely of circumstances. The original ranch house, now carefully preserved, became a museum of sorts, open to the public by appointment. Visitors could see the bedroom where Little Bear had been born, the kitchen where White Bird Woman had taught Kyle to prepare traditional foods, the porch where Kyle and Zara had sat for countless evenings, watching the sun set over their land. But more than any physical place, the true legacy of Kyle and Zara lived on in the hearts and actions of those who came after them. It lived on in every act of kindness shown to a stranger, every bridge built between different communities, every time someone chose love over fear. The story of the rancher who gave shelter to a pregnant native woman, and the love that grew from that single act of compassion, became more than history. It became a guiding light, a reminder of what humans are capable of at their best. And so, though Kyle and Zara had long since passed from this world, their love story continued. It continued in the land they had worked together, in the children and grandchildren who carried their blood, in the community they had helped build, and in the countless lives they had touched. It was a story without end, because true love, the kind that Kyle and Zara had shared, never really dies. It transforms, it spreads, it inspires new stories in new generations. On quiet nights when the wind blows across the Montana plains, some say you can still feel their presence there on the ranch, two souls forever intertwined, watching over the legacy they created together. Whether this is true or merely a romantic notion, it does not really matter. What matters is that Kyle and Zara lived, they loved, they overcame obstacles that might have defeated lesser people, and they left the world better than they found it. That is the true measure of a life well lived, and it is the happiest of endings. For while death came to them both as it comes to all living things, the love they shared and the family they created lived on, eternal and unbreakable, a beacon of hope in a world that sometimes forgets the power of compassion and the strength of love that bridges all divides.